another question that I have received a lot of is the question of connecting to guides. Well, why can't I connect to my guides? What do I do to connect to my guides? This and that. Well, the main problem I've discovered amongst people is the preconceived notions of what a guide is, how they handle themselves, their relationship with the person being guided. Um, we should take into consideration that we live in a culture almost dominated by media manufactured notions. Um, they're designed to mold our perception of reality. I won't go into depth about this here, but I can list a couple examples. Most of us are familiar with the media's perceptions of contacts with guides. There are generally two stereotypes that at least come to my mind. The first common stereotype. I'm sorry about the sniffles. I really can't help it. The first common one is of the person roaming up in this fancy get-up with archaic sigils, bounding around a dusty stone temple, pleading with his guide to grace his unworthy being with their presence. The guide then comes in, displays as some bitter, vengeful being with either some kind of ugly or sultry countenance. The guide that proceeds to issue commandments, quite often contrary to anyone's benefit but the guide's. Quite often, in the end, it's shown that the guide is just using the individual, and the individual usually ends up getting screwed. And I think if you treat history as a guide, you know that the media has no compunction whatsoever of portraying whatever happens to be the enemy of the day as in any kind of undesirable light. They have no problem spreading misinformation about them, and you know and one just has to look back at the vaudeville days, or back in the days of the Catholic Church when they reigned. It was like that was constant misinformation. They couldn't help themselves. I mean, so one should take that into consideration when considering that stereotype. The second common stereotype is one of like a person being whisked off to a mystical faraway land, or maybe being beamed up on a ship. Now, before I say this, I'm sure some of you had genuine experiences being beamed up on a ship. I'm not putting you down for that. Right now, I'm just covering how the media portrays that. This is not about actual experiences in this particular section. What basically happens is, it's like, oh, hello, we've decided to contact you. The planet's in trouble, and the individual's like given a tour, shown a few impressive gadgets and sights. Then the guides proceed with their politics, which quite often happen to jive with the Dark Cabal's plan anyway. Oddly enough, there's no real outward malice, but let me put it this way: the guides are always presented as stoic, antiseptic. Generally, they come from varying planets. Could be from halfway across the galaxy, but they all happen to be neo-Hindu. And I'm not putting anybody who's Hindu down. That's not my point here. I mean, the point is, if you see like varying cultures and diversities all subscribing to this one point of view, it generally sets off a red flag for me. Like I said, they don't display any real outward malice in these media presented images, but there's always this hint of, you can disagree with us, but I can't guarantee there's going to be, you're going to be able to ride in our ship anymore. There's always that kind of underlying, what you call it, this sort of like underlying stigma. That kind of sets off a red flag for me, because it's almost like a Pavlovian attitude, like an attempt to get somebody to follow along, like almost like a college prank or something. I mean, I really don't have any other way of, kind of relating. It's just, I mean, it just sounds so incredibly ridiculous to me that, any kind of alien species that's gonna take that kind of attitude is anywhere ambassadorial. I mean, yeah, it's more of a political thing. I mean, than any kind of reaching out to different cultures and stuff like that. But, that's just me. Well, the very first thing I would advise you to do, not only when trying to contact your guides, but any kind of light working endeavor, is to evaluate your perceptions and how they came to be. Personal experience should almost always come first when it comes to evaluating a situation. Well, certainly, that's not to say you can't obtain truth from the media to a certain extent, and there's a lot of true information out there. However, the media right now is in a state where it's just so jumbled with misinformation and politics right now that there's no way you can completely rely on it as a self-evident source of info. Like I said, in this process of reevaluating your perceptions, you ask yourself, well, how did I come to this conclusion? Did I get it from personal experience, or did some guru in like a Hawaiian t-shirt and, these khaki shorts and Birkenstocks simply just tell me to say, simply acted like it was true just because he said so? I mean, they can present a certain amount of truth, but you can't really rely on intellectual information alone. The intellect by itself can easily be misled, as there is evidence in history that this has constantly happened, and this is happening to this day, and they don't intend to let up, even though they, their time is up anyway. Yeah, they just don't know when to quit, even when their backs to the wall. Well, the key is here, you want to unite the intellect and the intuition. I mean, if you have the intuition as a guide, it's so much harder for them to mislead you. I mean, my point here is that you shouldn't rely on media presentations as a way shower. And you should either endeavor to either prove or disprove such stereotypes, or at the very least, not consider them, to use a phrase, canon law, which is actually an interesting phrase, law by canon. Think of it this way. Sitcoms are produced all the time portraying television families. But this is sort of like another aspect the media would present to you, instead of, guide contact or something like that. I mean, I always used to think to myself when I was seeing these shows, whose family acts like this? I have never once in my life encountered any family that even remotely acts like this. There's a reason for this. I mean, the reason why is because the media doesn't follow real life. The media either gives you something to follow or something to run away from. It never tells you actually how, because it's not there to inform. It's there to steer. It's there to steer society in a desired direction. They have what they do is they have two different types of models they go by. They have role model families, like something like the Cosby Show or something like that. Talk about a dated reference, telling you this is how you should behave. This is how Dad should react. This is how Mr. Huxtable should act when Theo encounters this situation with a girl. And that's how you should react too. This is how you should react when, you're the wife and you see your husband trying to actually, eat some cake. I mean, you're supposed to flip out at them. You're supposed to give them grief and give them that evil eye and be super manipulative and, but it's done out of love, And then you have the anti-role model families, like something like The Simpsons, telling you this is how you should behave. This is like, it's almost like, they put in these little quirks and stuff that people have, and they roll it all up into one thing. Then you can sit there and say at home, "Oh, I'm glad I'm not like that. I'm not that dysfunctional." And when somebody actually does display one of those traits, immediately all those other traits are just clumped up onto this person. They're pigeonholed into being, dysfunctional white trash or something like that. I don't know. I don't even know if white trash is the proper word, but I mean, the whole point. I mean, it's very, in a certain sense, of course. I mean, it's okay to kind of seek guidance from people who know better, but when you consider who funds that programming, who perpetuates that programming through advertising, through funding, whose interests do you think they represent? I mean, whose definition of family is being implemented here? This is the first obstacle you got to overcome when you're connecting with your guides and reevaluate cultural programming, because that's just going to be a big block for you until you can get past the baloney that that's been crammed into all of our brains during our lives. The next obstacle is believing in oneself. I'm not worthy to contact beings of light. It's this and that. Why not? Aren't you a being of light yourself? I mean, try not to see guides as these out-of-touch beings that are just like so way out there, so far removed that you'd be like hiring a shut-in Cleveland. I mean, it's like, the notion of that is so ridiculous, because it's like saying the universe would hire a shut-in in Cleveland to do a comprehensive tour of Cairo for other people. It's ridiculous. It sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? I mean, these guys have been through what you have been through, and are offering a perspective that's different, that's kind of been, I've been there, I kind of see it from a better angle, and I'm just offering you some advice. It's not like, I'm pushing it on you. I mean, it may be that they've been through exactly what you have been through, because a lot of times it's your higher self. I mean, they must think I'm ugly or impure. I mean, I hear that a lot too. I mean, that's bullshit. I mean, they see the beauty within you. They see beyond all that. I mean, if they were real, think about it. If they were really that repulsed by you, would they even bother? I mean, they are here to give you a manicure or a colonic, okay? They're here to help you realize the light that you are. And a lot of people get intimidated because they feel like, oh, they're so far ahead of me in wisdom. Well, yeah. I mean, they're not so high up in an ivory tower that they can't be bothered with questions. What's the point of learning if you can't share with others? I mean, they may get frustrated with me and leave. Well, you'll be surprised how patient they are, which is why I have issues with how they're portrayed sometimes in the media. They get the impression of toe the line, or I can't guarantee these communications will continue. Bullshit. I mean, what kind of guides pick up the ball and go home in the final quarter of the game and it's like right down to the last minute? I mean, what the heck? Here's a tip. Make a list of your concerns. Really examine them. See how much genuine concern and how much is just guilt tripping. That's all right now. I've got to cut this short because it's getting too long. I'll continue this in the next video. See you then.